Hi again, everybody, and welcome back to USA. I am pleased to be joined once again. It's an annual tradition now to speak with Sharks television play-by-play voice Randy Hahn. Randy, good to see you. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Eric. Happy New Year. I'm doing fine. And what are we just on the countdown now to being back on the air, which is exciting.
Great to have you back in the broadcast booth. But first things first. As you make your way to the broadcast booth, we check back in with you once the pause kind of was in its first month. And the most important question on the mind: how will Frost Cupcake cope without their most popular delivery guy?
Yeah, for those who didn't tune into that episode, I was helping out my girlfriend with her business and delivering cupcakes for about 3 or 4 months. But that time has passed, and there's a new delivery person now, not affiliated with the Sharks organization. In fact, I don't know who it is. But yeah, that was fun, and got to see the South Bay in particular in a way that I never had before, kind of going down streets and into neighborhoods that you would only go to if you were visiting someone that you knew. And this allowed me to see the area in a brand new way. Plus traffic was light back then. So it was fun bombing around in a little Scion with cupcakes on the side and waving at little kids as we drove by with a cupcake car.
Oh my gosh, that must have been fun either way. And just it's like the ice cream guy only with fancy cupcakes. I love it.
Exactly, that was me.
All right, so moving on from hot chocolate cupcakes to our beloved San Jose Sharks. We got a 56 game season coming, kind of unprecedented. We're in a temporary West Honda division, whatever you want to call it. What do you think the Sharks will improve this season?
Well, it is a very unique situation here, and uh, necessitated due to the COVID restrictions, particularly between Canada and the U.S. and the requirement on both sides to quarantine, especially Americans going into Canada. It's a 10-day quarantine period, mandatory, and that necessitated all the Canadian teams playing together, and they had to figure everything else out. Um, it's not really four divisions almost. It's more like four different leagues because of all the play within the division. So, you think back to say last year, and it's a Sunday night in Ottawa, and the Sharks are on the final game of a road trip and maybe playing back to back because they played in Montreal the night before, and then, they blow a lead in Ottawa and end up losing in a shootout. You sort of go, you know what? We still got a point, and who cares how many Ottawa got? That's not the case anymore because every game is the 4-point game. And if you blow the lead and end up losing in a shootout to the Ducks, you just gave them a point that might be the one that they used to beat you at the end of the season. So every game takes on a much more important role, aside from the fact that the schedule is shorter, and everything the need for a good start is so important. It's not just the start. Every game now is huge when it comes to playoff implications. And, I think the Sharks, as we heard from Logan Couture this week at training camp, and I've heard it from a number of the players at camp, and I'm like everyone else, I'm at arm's length. We're not allowed to go to camp in Arizona and be in the training facility in Scottsdale. But all I hear is a group of guys who feel like, yes, they will contend for a playoff spot, and they expect to be in the playoffs. So that's great to hear. I haven't seen a lot of that predicted by people outside of the dressing room. Most of the predictions I've seen have the Sharks not making the playoffs. But then I ask, if you are going to give the 3 spots to 3 of the top teams in the Western Conference last year, and it's fair enough, the St. Louis Blues, the Colorado Avalanche, and the Vegas Golden Knights, then who's going to get that 4th one? Are you telling me the Sharks can't beat out Arizona for it, or the 2 other California teams, the Kings or the Ducks or the Minnesota Wild? I present that they can. I would stack up the Sharks roster on paper against those other teams and say the Sharks have the best roster. Now, you could argue about certain positions, and people are going to point to goaltending right away as the first one. But if you go up and down that group and look at the quality players the Sharks have and a couple of Norris Trophy winners on their blue line, I would suggest that they have, of the teams other than those three, they have the best roster. So I concur that the Sharks ought to be able to contend for a playoff spot. And who knows in this short season? Maybe it won't even be that fourth. Maybe it'll be higher up. But I don't think they care what slot they're in. They just want to get in.
Right. And I think whenever the pundits will say can cast some doubt on this team, historically they've seemed to surprise everyone, which I hope is the case this season. But what excites you about seeing just 7 other teams this season with so many back-to-back games? And then if the Sharks do go on to participate in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you've already seen these teams at least 8 times, and then it's just gonna, we know how playoff hockey just evolves into just a crazy time. I mean, it's just an incredible scenario when you look at it.
Well, I'm excited about the fact that you're going to further cement the rivalries that you have with teams like Vegas, obviously, the LA Kings, who have a stocked farm system, and we're going to start seeing some of these young players this year, and it's going to be a different looking Kings team. Same with the Anaheim Ducks, who have some tremendous prospects. And while you won't be able to hate on Corey Perry anymore, and you couldn't last year because he was with Dallas, and this year you won't at all because he's with Montreal, and the only way the Sharks would face him would be in the playoffs if they were to get out of the Western Division. But reconfirming those rivalries, and then I'm not saying that the rivalry with the Coyotes has been, comparable to those other two, or even Colorado, or Minnesota, but that could all change in a big hurry because you're going to be playing these teams so many times. And as I was looking through the schedule again today, on some occasions, you're going to play them 4 games in a row, 2 games in their building, and then 2 games in whatever the Sharks will call home at that point. So when you play the same team 4 times in a row in the span of, 8 or 9 days, that is awesome because it replicates playoffs in a sense, but it also brings out the nasty. And that's the best hockey, when there's emotion on the ice and when people don't like each other on the ice. So I think it's tremendously exciting. You might look at it and say, well, this is going to be boring. We're going to get the diet of the same 7 opponents for 56 games. But I think it's going to be the opposite. I think it's going to be tremendous. And I think we'll see things like rivalries between teams like Vegas and maybe Colorado, or maybe St. Louis with Pietrangelo now in Vegas, and those teams clashing. And, I don't just enjoy watching Sharks games, which is my job to watch them. I like to come home on my off nights and watch these other games and the rivalries all around the league. I mean, can you imagine, Crosby and Ovechkin going at it 8 times, and the Battle of Alberta 8 times, and so on and so on. So I think that's going to make for very compelling games, and it's going to be an awful lot of fun to see them.
Especially with how it's set up for series, these mini 2-game series, or like you said, like a 4-game, I think you said Minnesota. I mean, it's going to be fun just to learn from that first game. That second game, you're going to be like, okay, here's how we're going to adjust. Here's how we're going to get a little crazy. And yeah, definitely get a lot nasty for sure. So going from the ice up to the broadcast booth, Randy, of course, we heard about the departure of Jamie Baker. Wish Bakes all the best to him. What's the plan for the broadcast teams on the TV side and going forward this season?
Well, at this point, we are going to have all 56 games televised, 53 of them on NBC Sports California, where we've always been. And NBCSN has now taken 3 of our games, including the game on um, April the 21st at Vegas, which would be the game where Patrick Marleau would pass, if he plays all the games before that, would pass Gordie Howe to become the number one on the list of all times game played in the history of the National Hockey League. So that was sort of a one you knew that they would target. And should Marleau miss any games before that, and that milestone game comes a little later, I would imagine they might make some changes there. And I don't know who will broadcast as far as play-by-play and color those 3 games on NBCSN. That's to be determined. It may be Brett Hedican and I. It may be some other broadcast team. We just don't know at this point. But the plan for the other 53 is yours truly doing play-by-play, Hedican doing color. I don't think we're going to have an inside-the-glass situation this year. At least that's not in the cards to start things, because the Sharks don't have access to SAP Center due to Santa Clara County rules. So they're playing in Arizona. We won't even be there. Brett and I will be calling the games from either a studio setting, at least initially, and maybe later at some point we will call the road games from SAP Center and just set up our normal situation there. And for now, the Sharks' home games will be in Arizona, and the plan is for Brett and I to call those remotely off a screen as well. And then on the radio side, Dan Rusanowski is going to be joined by Scott Hannon at times, Mark Smith at times, and I think Sharks fans have heard those voices before. Hannon's done some tremendous work on the TV side, pinch hitting for Curtis Brown occasionally on the pregame show, and also some radio color. And Mark Smith's done a great job in that role as well. And it's just great to see the alumni not only get the opportunity, but to embrace it and want to be involved in these kind of things. And I think they bring a lot of insight and help connect fans from years gone by to the present broadcast. So that's the plan. Brody Brazil and Curtis Brown in the studio as usual. It's going to be different, obviously, for Brett and I to call the games off a screen. I talked to some of the other broadcasters in the league who did that during the playoffs last summer, and it was described as, imagine yourself driving a car, but the only window you get to look out of is the driver's side front window, the windshield.
Oh,
You can't, you don't have a side window, you don't have a rear view mirror, and you don't even have the other half of the front windshield. So you lose a lot of peripheral vision, and you miss seeing things like line changes, maybe the trailing referee's arm go up to call a penalty, the things that I take for granted that you just see because you can see the entire ice surface. We won't see that. And we'll just have to adjust to it. I've never called a game that way before. I'm going to try and replicate a few early next week just here at home, calling them off TV in my office. But, you won't really know how it goes until you're sitting in front of the screen. But that's the broadcast plan going forward, always subject to change. You never know. And we're all crossing our fingers that, the situation in Santa Clara County and around the country will improve as the vaccine rollout continues, and we'll be able to get back into SAP Center, calling Sharks games from there, and hopefully at some point with fans there too.
Yeah. I think it's been about 10 months since I've been in, or actually 11 months since I've been inside the tank with everything going on. And I can't imagine how big of a challenge that can be just calling from one screen, because you're right. You could see the whole, behind the play, Patty's getting mixed up with Petrangelo. It's one of those little nuances, but you're an absolute pro for it.
We'll see.
But
might suck.
No, not at all. But if you're calling games from, I guess, either from a studio or eventually from an arena, Are you going to go full suit and tie, or are we going to go with like the jogging pants underneath, or how is that going to
Well,
work
I
out?
think I think for game one, because I don't exactly know how they're going to shoot us in the studio, and we may have some presence on the pregame show.
Okay.
I'm going to go full suit, but if it's apparent they're only shooting us from the neck up or from the waist up, I'm probably going to go blazer and then pajama bottoms and fuzzy slippers. Why not? Why change everything I've been wearing every day during COVID? What everybody's wearing, right?
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I do have the fuzzy slippers. I'm not gonna
I'm not
lie.
going to ask you to stand up
No,
because
no, no,
that'd be TMI, but I can only imagine.
no, no, no. Just chest up. That's all we're gonna do.
There you go.
Earlier today, the Sharks announced the Sharks Audio Network. Tell if you have any info about this new venture and how you'll be involved.
Well, basically, the Sharks are leaving traditional terrestrial radio. They've been on KFOX 98.5 FM for the last 20 years with Dan Rusanowski and assorted color commentators over the years. And this is a move that's happening throughout pro sports as it becomes more and more difficult to nail down radio airwaves in various markets. It's been a real challenge over the years. And in some parts of the Bay Area, you can hear KFOX, and they've been a great partner for the Sharks. And in others, you can't, but you could online, and so on and so on. But as soon as the game was over, as soon as that post-game show was wrapped up, boom, back to their regular programming, which is completely understandable. Moving to an app, an online-based service, is going to allow the Sharks to run their own channel. And they'll be, the rollout will start primarily with games, and there'll be some, preseason preview and some long form interviews. Eventually, we're going to get involved with going back and talking to a lot of the alumni and things of that nature, and getting caught up with their lives and what some of these players are now doing. Players that were iconic at their time, but maybe haven't been around for any of the alumni events the Sharks have had over the years due to distance. They may live in Europe and whatnot. I'd love to talk to Teemu Selanne for half an hour. I'd love to talk to Igor Larionov for half an hour, and even some of the guys who are around. I mean, how fun would it be to bounce it around with Evgeny Nabokov for half an hour and just talk about the old days, or Ryan Klo, and so on and so on. You get my drift. So there's going to be a certain amount of that. Ted Ramey, who's been doing some programming for the Sharks in the past, is going to be part of the mix as well. Rusanowski, of course, it might end up being called Ruzy Radio if he has anything to say about it. But, there'll be various contributors, myself, Hedekin, the aforementioned Hannon and Smith will probably chime in. And who knows, there could be surprises throughout the year as far as who ends up showing up on the channel. But the actual way it's going to work is like most things now. You download an app, and then you push a button on the app and you can listen to the games live for free. And if you want to stream them in your car, you Bluetooth your phone to your car, and now you're listening to the Sharks game through your phone on the speakers in your car, or whatever app, whatever device you have. So it is a departure. It is going to be a change for people. But, I think about, and obviously this is at a much different metric, but I think about when Netflix announced that they were going to stop renting DVDs, and people lost their minds. Like, you're crazy. This streaming thing, it's a long way off to catching on. You don't know what you're doing, and I'm never going to do anything with Netflix again. And of course, I think they still actually do rent DVDs, believe it or not. It's a very small part of their business, but everything shifted to streaming. And this is where the business is going. We may even see it move that way to TV in the future. Who knows? But for now, it's moving into the radio realm, and every game will be streamed. I think you'll have expanded pregame, you'll have expanded postgame. There's opportunity to do call-in shows, which I think are really a good thing for fans to be able to call in live and interact and talk about the game that night. There's all kinds of opportunities to do all kinds of programming, and it's all going to be in the palm of your hand, and that's pretty convenient. And you throw in some earbuds if you're working in the backyard, and you can still listen to the game with your phone. And I think it's exciting. There's going to be a learning curve for everybody as anything like this that is a drastic change, and it is that. But I think once people get the hang of it, it's going to be great.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it'll be a fun venture, and to hear more about the Sharks is one thing we've always thought about when we started this whole thing up. So that's awesome that it's going to be happening. But before I let you go, one last thing, with it being the Sharks' 30th anniversary, I'm going to have you pick a favorite moment.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Calls coming in.
All right.
Could be a job offer. I don't know, but I just declined it.
Uh-oh. We'll make this quick then. With this being the Sharks' 30th anniversary season, pick a favorite moment from each decade of Sharks hockey.
Oh, boy. Well, from the 90s, it's got to be Jamie Baker's goal against the Detroit Red Wings. From the third one, the third decade, it's got to be the come from behind playoff Game 7 against the Vegas Golden Knights, which is not only the best Sharks game I've ever been to, but it's the best sporting event I've ever been a part of. Yep. Just because of the sheer shock factor. And that middle decade, while, boy, this is going to be a bizarre moment, but I like it because it speaks to rivalry and things like that. And it's when Owen Nolan finally had enough with Grant Marshall and skated all the way across the ice to cross-check him, and he ended up getting a huge suspension for 10 games. But it was like, all right, Owen, you finally got him. You finally fixed his wagon. I'll bet he leaves you alone for the rest of your career, and I think he did. So that's just off the top of my head, but it's not a game-winning moment or anything, but it's kind of the fabric of what Owen was all about. And he's another guy that I look forward to having on an alumni, look back kind of show to talk about those days with Ricci and Scott Thornton and Gary Suter and the whole gang from back then. Yeah. That was a great era of Sharks hockey as well.
Yeah, and you've been a part of each and every one of them. I appreciate you immensely as always. Randy Hahn, always thank you for taking the time to join us. You can find Randy at Shark Voice on both Twitter and Instagram. As always, bud, take care. All the best to you.
My pleasure, Eric. Go Sharks. Enjoy the season, everybody.